My name is Cathy Nelson. I'm the CEO and founder of the Photo Managers. This first session today is about why do we have Save Your Photos Month? We have Rachel Arbuckle with us. She is the owner of 2000 Paces in San Diego area, and she runs an amazing business helping clients with their photo collection. And then Rachel Niesen, who started Save Family Photos, and she has an amazing background. She's a professional photographer. She's also the chief product Foreground, and she's going to share with us some of her experience as well. Let's just start with Rachel Arbuckle. Tell us why you started 2000 Paces and why this topic is of such importance to you.
Absolutely. Thanks. It's incredible to see some familiar faces and names and a lot of new people. So I hope that everyone gets a little bit of information. I started my company 2000 Paces Photo Organizing after a serious fire forced us to evacuate in 2014. So as Cathy mentioned, I live in San Diego County and fires are very prevalent. It's not the first time, and I'm certain it's not going to be the last time, but I was working in corporate America and had no thoughts of starting a company like this. But when my neighbor knocked on the door and said, look, there's a fire probably 100 yards away, and we literally had minutes to get out of our gated community, I looked at the bottom of the hill and I looked up at the fire, and all I could think about was our computers and memory cards and albums and scrapbooks that were all over the house that were at risk of being lost. And for 7 days we were evacuated, which is the longest I've ever been evacuated. And I made a promise to myself, staring up at that hill with the flames behind our community, that if our memories survived, I was going to make sure to get them organized. And so I looked around and got some information and got my own photos organized and decided that I didn't want other people to experience that same guilt and anxiety I did, and I wanted to help other people. So that's what sort of out of the ashes, if you will, I was prompted to start the company.
All right, wonderful. Now, Rachel, the other Rachel N., why don't you tell us your story about for Save Family Photos and how they can find you also on Instagram?
So interestingly, my story, the origin story, is similar to Rachel Arbuckle, only my experience with really, I would say, having a paradigm shift, understanding the value, the intrinsic value of photo memories in particular, happened for me when my grandfather died. So it was the first real family death I'd experienced that impacted me in a deep way because I had been very close to my grandfather. And I honestly had never really had much curiosity about his photo collection or my grandparents' lifelong photo collection. I'd always been more concerned about the memories and the here and now because my background is in photojournalism. So I had been taking pictures for a living for many years, and of current events, not of historic events or family events. So at that time, I actually was gifted a box of old photos of my grandfather's life, his time in the Navy, his time in California meeting my grandmother. And my grandmother was starting to actually forget a lot of the stories behind the photos. So I spent a lot of time with her going through those photos and just realizing that it wasn't just the physical two-dimensional objects that mattered, it was the stories that they prompted that I started capturing for her. At the time, putting it into a book that we could all appreciate and remember as a milestone of my grandfather's life. So I just, out of curiosity, thought, I wonder if other people in my demographic or psychographic group, women in their 30s, were interested in this kind of pastime or project. So I started posting where I spent a lot of time, which is Instagram, because I'm sort of borderline millennial, I guess, and posted some pictures of my grandfather and then texted a bunch of friends and said, hey, do you have any pictures of your loved ones? And images started rolling in. And what started as just a personal passion project grew into 100,000 others sharing photos and hashtagging Save Family Photos on Instagram. And honestly, an outpouring of people emailing or direct messaging with memories that one image prompted. So it all started with single images. And of course, there's the value in the collection of images too. But just starting with one really helped me understand the value that we can all uncover through photos.
And what I love about your Instagram account, you post that one photo, usually that people must send to you, right? And that little story about who they are in those photos. And it's fascinating because at the photo and you get an idea sometimes of the personalities, right, of the people that
Hmm.
that get shared with you. Or, and some of them that I love are like from maybe the turn of the century or whatever, women, kind of that were real pioneers or different,
Hmm.
and the stories about those grandmothers and things and grandfathers is fascinating.
Yeah,
So
definitely. It's pretty humbling to see what people send, and it's I will say too, it's almost like it reminds me that so much of history that we hear about on the news is not necessarily the history that matters most to people, but it's that day-to-day history that really matters. So yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I love to, there's a saying that I think many people have heard me say, if you know me, but that I really believe we're a people of stories, right? That as human beings, we're wired to tell stories, to tell, if you're sitting around the dinner table tonight, and you're going to probably tell a story of what happened in your day. I was joking that, I spilled, good thing for Zoom, you're only seeing me from neck up because I spilled some things on my pants. But I mean, that's like part of who we are as humans, right? We tell these stories, and the way in photos today is a significant way that we capture our family stories, our visual heritage, and they're most at risk of being lost today more than ever, through lots of different reasons. It's our photo memories are most at risk, and that's the reason for people together and help people find a path forward. So next, I'm going to ask some more questions, but also if you have questions that you want to ask either of these experts, go ahead and put it in the chat. And we have people monitoring this, and we'll get to as many questions as we have, or a comment or anything like that. So we'd love to make sure that we leave plenty of time for some interaction with you, the audience, as well. So the next, so Rachel Arbuckle, again, could you tell us, so as a lot of people are shocked that there's such a thing, like people actually organize other people's photos. How is that possible? So can
Right.
you just share with us a typical client journey, and the emotions that that happen when you help somebody with a project, and what does that actually look like? How in the world do you possibly know how to organize somebody's photos?
Sure. There's a lot I could speak on answering that question in an entire hour session.
Yeah.
So I will, right. And it's so funny that you kind of started with the idea that people don't know we exist. And I think I don't think I've ever had a person call, reach out to me, email, text, social media, however they reach out to me. And every single time I hear, wow, I did not know people like you existed. And it's because there's such a need. And really, there are very few people, I think, in this world that couldn't benefit from having an expert help guide them through. So, clients often reach out to us sharing that they were motivated to call us because of maybe a special event coming up, a milestone birthday, or like Rachel shared, unfortunately, the loss of a loved one. And they want to compile their photos for a photo book or a photo slideshow for a memorial. But ultimately, the clients are calling us because they want relief. They want relief from the anxiety and the overwhelm of taking on such a large and important project. They want relief from fear that their precious memories could be damaged or lost. I mean, we're talking about, I was prompted by the fires, but we're talking about hurricanes. And, so that's a real fear. And I've had clients say that they wake up at night and have had nightmares that they've lost these precious memories because they're truly priceless. And they call us because they want relief from guilt of not getting the baby book done for their first or second or fourth child, or, I'm going to get to it someday and I just haven't done it. So these feelings are very real. So even though there's that initial motivation sparked by sort of a specific instance, it's really motivated by these internal feelings. And so we start each project with a free consultation to discuss the client's goals and kind of explain to them how we can help them. And each of our projects is very customized. But it's interesting because once the client makes that decision to work with us and experienced professionals in photo organizing, there's this distinct sound, or if they're with me, sigh of relief. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard, just with them handing those photos over to us, I feel like a weight was lifted off of my chest. And so just being able to pass on such an important project and know that it's going to be protected is so important. So when we talk about the journey, again, I could go into a lot of detail, but a high level, and then I'll answer any questions. Once we start working on a client's project and they've made that decision, we gather information such as family tree information, and we have a genealogist on staff and things like that. So we do a little bit of detective work. And the first thing we do is get everything into one place. And that could be photos in albums and boxes. That could be photos, digital photos that are online or on phones, memory cards, or maybe home movies on some old technology that we haven't seen in decades. We get it all into one place because we need to kind of evaluate what we have and put together a comprehensive collection. Then we organize, we rename, we put it in sort of a sequence that makes sense. We remove photos that don't tell the client's story, right? That's our focus. Each client has his or her own journey and story, and we really want to capture that. I'll share a quick story. Sometimes we find little treasures. We were working with a client about a year ago, and she had a number of boxes that had been sitting in the garage for quite some time. She had lost her husband of 40 years to cancer, and it was very difficult, of course, for her. And so she handed these boxes over to us and really trusted us, and we're so honored when clients do that. And as we're going through, we found this, and I get choked up every time, but we found this handwritten note, and it simply said, "I love you always and forever, B." And it was her husband, and we brought it, I brought it to her home, and the tears of just joy and thanks. And we ended up, of course, scanning it in to make sure it was protected and framing it for her. And it was like he was talking to her from beyond. And so saving those memories, those are the stories that make me feel just so filled with joy, and to be able to provide that. So we find some treasures along the way as we're organizing. And at the completion of the project, we actually provide the client with, we do a comprehensive project overview to show this is where you were at and this is where you're at now, because sometimes we forget where we started. And then from there, we actually provide training. Their photos are, if they're print, they go into archival storage. We also put them on an external hard drive they can access on either a PC or a Mac, and we create an online customized site. And so we want to empower our clients to be able to enjoy their photos, right? I mean, we're protecting them and we're organizing them, but ultimately we want our clients to enjoy those memories again. And I saw some of the comments saying, looking back on the memories and enjoying the memories, but I imagine there are many on here who you look through your phone or you remember a particular memory and it's in a box in an album somewhere. And what a relief to be able to click a button and type a name, and those photos just magically pop up there. So our goal is really not only to provide, again, the organization and protection, but we want our clients to enjoy and share their photos for years to come.
That's, it's a wonderful story. And I think as hopefully those of you that are thinking about tackling this on your own, it's the same process of what Rachel mentioned too. We talk about gathering everything into one place, taking inventory, figuring out what you have. So that's a great, thank you, Rachel. I know you could spend hours on that topic. So now Rachel Niesen, who has an amazing background, both as like I mentioned, as a professional photographer and now chief product officer at a company called Foreground. What advice do you have about the types of photos that people take, and how do they make sure they capture those memories, right? Because we have this ability to take so many photos in an instant, but how do you know, what advice do you give to people, or do you think as a photojournalist as well about the photos that you're taking of your amazing son, right, who's now just starting kindergarten? So you have a great subject matter person to take photos of.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's interesting, as part of my role at Foreground, which is a company that actually serves both pro photographers and consumers with everything from online photo galleries to photo products like books, canvases, textiles like blankets. We do a lot of market research. And one of the things that we've invested a lot in is consumer psychology research. And the two biggest motivations that we found in our consumer market research is, one, when it comes time to understand the value of a memory, usually there is a trigger point, like other Rachel mentioned, that it's some form of nostalgia because you feel like you're at risk of losing it, you can't remember someone, or you want to preserve something for a specific reason. And then when it comes time to understanding how you take those memories and decide which ones are most valuable, that's when curation comes in. And curation is a huge pain point for consumers in general, which is why I think the work that Cathy and Rachel and Kate and many others who are here is so important, the work that you all are doing, because consumers aren't great curators. It's all of us, I think, struggle with curating our own memories. So having a third party, whether that's a photo manager who's a professional or someone who's just a sounding board for you to curate, is really important. And there's actually an interesting curation formula. I don't think you can ever be too formulaic, but there is a formula that I tend to lean on that actually comes from my background in photojournalism. Many years ago, there was a famous photo editor who ran Life magazine before it went out of business, out of circulation, who had 7 types of photos that he would look for when considering what to publish, like what got from film into a printed publication. And it was images that showed relationships between people, images that showed something about someone, even if the person wasn't in it. So in that case, it might be a note, for a photo of a note, for example, or a photo of maybe a bride's bouquet that was from a vintage photo or a current photo. The others were a sense of place. So in my experience, that's usually a picture of a home, my grandparents' home. I have a couple of pictures I've saved and cataloged of my grandparents' home in different seasons: spring, winter, summer. Those are the big ones, and the others are details, like things that are unique to a person that you could only see in a photo. Whether it's the interior of someone's room. This room that I'm in right now is my favorite room. It says a lot about me, so me in this room. And another one was something that shows honest emotion, is what he called it, where there's like a reaction of some kind. For me, it's, I had a pose picture of my son in front of his school, and then I had one where he is actually doing something that's very indicative of him, which is actually trying to wink at a friend that he saw across the way. And that's my favorite photo, not the pose one of him holding his little kindergarten sign. So there are tricks that you can use for curation. And at some point I can actually gather that. I have a slide presentation somewhere on that Life magazine formula that's really helpful for me, because we're creating new images at a rate that's astounding. Honestly, I think I saw something, it was like 1.17 trillion photos in 2021 alone. And the reality is our phones are like junk drawers of photos. Like, to me, it's like, or even Google Drive. I mean, I have Google Drive syncing, and half of it's like, a screenshot of a receipt or where I parked at the airport. I mean, it's just, we really have to do a lot more curation now, or automate it somehow, or work with a professional. So and get into a habit of curation. I think you can actually habitualize it, and that's really an important skill to learn, is to habitually curate, meaning deleting. Kill those darlings, as my friend likes to say. Just delete. You have to delete. It's powerful. So sorry, that was a lot that I just dropped. But like,
Oh, that was amazing.
That's like a whole topic.
Rachel, I know we can do a whole course on that too. I mean, that's why Save Your Photos, there's so much to it. But I love that. I love those 7 steps. I need to, the good thing is send them to me.
Yeah.
We'll add that in the email response here. And we also are transcribing this. There's a live transcription happening, so we can remember that. But I think so. That's a great advice as you go, for those of you, again, that are going to do this yourself, is looking at those photos that tell those stories. Those are some great, I'd like to say things, he says it better, but like the photo of your house when with the fir tree out in front is just, this high. And then here's a photo where it's suddenly, when you planted that when your child was born, and suddenly it's, so those are things as photo organizers too, that we would ask our clients, because I did a lot of photo organizing as well. We ask those kind of questions, is this photo, does this tell a story? And what, a lot of times what those stories are, people's, like that wink, right, is perfect. That curation of this is the character that my son is at, at this age, so thank you. That was really helpful. So now let's take some time for questions from the audience, because we wanted to keep this, it's already been 25 minutes. We want to keep it to about 45 minutes. So if Kate, I'm going to probably have you come off, you may not want to come off, just come off mute, and maybe have you been gathering some questions? And I'm assuming that maybe you're answering questions as they come up as well.
We have not
to
been,
look at the chat.
Sorry, we've not been answering questions as they come up, but we can certainly do this. So The first one that came in, somebody asked about, is there a service that will digitize a series of photo albums? And while Rachel's talking about that, maybe she could answer the question about how this works long distance for people.
Which Rachel?
I'm sorry, Arbuckle.
Arbuckle. Okay.
Sorry about
Okay,
that.
that's okay. So the question is getting photo albums digitized and working long distance?
Yes.
Okay, so getting photo albums digitized is, that we do that all day long. We do that either with a flatbed scanner, or we actually have a camera scanning rig, which is very similar to the one set up by the National Archives. And we're really proud of that. And so we can capture some amazing quality. Of course, with the photo managers, we would love to talk to you about your business, but with the photo managers, there are photo managers all over the world, right? Multiple countries now, Cathy. So I'm not sure where the person is that's asking about that, but you can always go to thephotomanagers.com. But for us in particular, you just need to find, I would work with somebody who is certified through the photo managers because they understand the quality. We have had clients that have gotten scans done at a very low resolution. And unfortunately, we've had to redo all the work for them. And that's just more time and money that they didn't have to spend. So it's worth putting forth a little effort. In regards to working long distance, for us in particular, I can only speak for my company. Of course, there are photo managers all over, but we have clients currently, again, I'm in San Diego, California. And we have a number of clients here in Southern California, LA, Orange County, and San Diego, but we have clients currently in Portland, Washington, Chicago, Philly. So it's been really exciting. And there are ways to work with clients remotely. So if you find a photo manager or a company that you really enjoy working with, ask some questions. And the digital part is a lot easier, of course, than the print. Obviously, if you're working with a photo manager long distance on print, you have two options, at least when you're working with us. You can either ship your items, and we have plenty of clients that do that, or I actually do fly out to clients' homes for larger projects. So for example, I'm going to DC in November, and I'm going to be there for 8 days from sun up to sundown, getting as much done as possible. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that's great. I've got two more for you, just I think because the folks are, just curious about how this whole process works.
Sure.
So somebody asked, when you're working with a client's collection, how involved is the client?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I mean, because every project we work on is customized, it really depends on the client. A lot of times I have found personally, and doing this for a while now, I'm working with hundreds of thousands of photos, that clients think they want to be involved. And then when they can hand that over, like I said, those feelings of relief, it's kind of, you take care of it, you're the experts, and then we show it to them when we're done. For most projects, though, what we do is we have a very specific process in how we organize things. So although every project is customized, we've got this process that enables us to efficiently work through each project. So we do have a period where we call the client review, and that's primarily for print photos. And so clients will either come into our office and work with us, or often we'll do a Zoom and we'll hold the photos up and say, hey, this is clearly a wedding. When was it, or who is this? We try and keep that to a minimum, though, because again, we're trying to help our clients get that sense of this project is finally getting done. We do have some clients that want to come in and kind of look through the photos. I have worked with clients in their homes, going through projects as we go, but it depends on the individual client.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to jump around a little bit here, but we'll get to all these, so don't worry, I'm not going in order. I just wanted to give Rachel Niesen a sec to answer here. Somebody asked, what company do you work for, Rachel? Do you want to explain kind of
Sure.
the things that you're involved in?
So I work for a company called Foreground, and we actually have a family of brands and a whole product ecosystem. So we have one brand that caters to pro photographers called Shootproof, and it's actually online galleries. So in many cases, if you've ever hired a pro photographer, you may have had images delivered to you in a gallery. It probably was Shootproof. We recently acquired a company called Collage.com that creates custom photo products where you can, I should say I'm speaking from a chief product officer perspective, I believe they have the best in class product building solutions. So even better than Shutterfly. Sorry, Shutterfly, where you can actually create books, blankets, pillows, you name it, using their product builders. So we're bringing those two worlds together to enable pros and consumers to work with one another to create products and to capture memories, but also to empower pros to have better tools to work with their consumer clients. So we also have some other brands in the mix there, but those are the two big ones that drive most of our revenue. So that was a lot.
Good, good. So kind of a nice segue actually to another question for Rachel Arbuckle. Somebody asked, you had mentioned that you deliver client projects to online websites as well. Do you want to talk about some of the options for that?
Unmute. Yeah, so there are of course a number of different options, and I'm not going to explore all of them on this call because again, that's a whole nother class. But we primarily like to use SmugMug. SmugMug is an online unlimited photo storage site. We love it for a number of reasons. It is encrypted and privacy protected, which I find, personally for my own family photos is really important. It's also really easy to share. So some sites like say Apple, in order to share them, everybody has to have an Apple ID and that sort of thing. I love that with SmugMug, you can simply share a group of photos. So for example, we actually had a family reunion last year, and we have family from everywhere from Mexico to Tahoe to New York, all over the place. And so I created a real quick link and everybody could simply upload photos right from their phones. And then of course I downloaded all of them and I'm putting together a photo book, surprise. So that just makes it really nice. And what I love about it is it's set up like a website. So even if you're not somebody who's technologically savvy, it makes it really easy to kind of understand and navigate through it. And then of course we provide a full training on how to use the site as well.
That's great. Thank you. We've got a couple of questions that kind of get into the weeds about organizing here. So this is for Rachel Arbuckle again here. Let's see. Somebody asked, what type of sequence do you use when you have an actual photo and then digital photos, I guess, of the same image? I think that's what the question
sequence,
is.
Like when you're batch naming it?
Or maybe how you keep track of the print and the digital image together, I guess. Or
well, let me try and address that, and then maybe the person could clarify to you in the message. The idea is that we've got, the reality is that we've got photos coming from everywhere, right? We've got print photos and albums, as I mentioned, and we've got the digital photos on memory cards. And that's sort of that paralyzing feeling that I experienced and a lot of our clients experience is, I don't even know where to get started. And I've got them on all these different mediums. And so the idea is to get it in one location. So for example, maybe you have your wedding and you've got some professional photos that were given to you many years ago, maybe on a CD or a thumb drive, or you downloaded them from a site. And then, you've also got these print photos that you had professionally done. And you can't access the photographer or anything anymore. So what we do is we're going to take all of those, we're going to put them all together and then batch sequence them. So it's good when if you're organizing on your own to come up with a naming convention that's pretty consistent. So there's different organizers that have different naming conventions, so I won't get into the specifics, but the idea is to create a very sort of simple umbrella of naming conventions and then merging them together. It's really good to use a duplicate finder program as well, and one that will enable you to remove duplicates that are both the digital and the print version. I'm not sure if that answered the question.
These are big questions, as we probably won't have time to get into a lot of detail about photo organizing. Hopefully you'll find the classes on the Save Your Photos Month. I know we have one on dedupe software and things. And again, these are great questions, but the advice from the photo manager's page is another place maybe to get some information. And we're going to continue to try and answer as many questions as we can, but just in the sometime getting into that kind of specifics on this type of call might be difficult today.
Let's see. So somebody says they have an elderly client who doesn't want to use their computer to search for photos. Is there any way to prepare a master list or a table of contents? So that certainly can be a challenge. Rachel Arbuckle, have you addressed that with any clients in the past?
With clients who who have somebody who's not as comfortable with technology, absolutely. We had a client who is in her mid 80s right now and did not feel comfortable despite, us being able to provide training. It's a level of comfort that she just couldn't wrap her head around. And so we did come up with a different plan for her. We actually set up, with SmugMug, for example, and we didn't have to use that, but with SmugMug, we were able to put it on her TV and, put the app on the TV and showed her how to use it. We also bought her a tablet. We just bought a tablet through Amazon so that she could look through the photos. So it's technology, but she was able to look through them in a very sort of simple format where she could just scroll through them rather than having to use a website or anything. Now, of course, the print photos are all organized in archival boxes and labeled so the client can go through that. I would say, and Rachel, maybe you want to speak on this too, being able to create a photo book, particularly for a client like that, or a video book, I think is a great way to show that story with that technology. Rachel, do you want to touch on that?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great example. I think it's interesting when I look at best practices for how to save memories. Usually, I sounds excessive, I realize, but I usually say 5 formats. So that could be cloud, it could be the original prints, it could be digital files that are scanned and then saved in the cloud or on a hard drive or both, ideally. Or it could be a physical book, which actually you're taking individual photos and then creating something new from them. In many cases, that could be a book. I think that I can't emphasize enough the priority of taking the work that, whether you're doing it yourself or working with a professional, to get the images digitized and then to turn them into something else that can be shared. Just how important that is, because how easy it is to duplicate, right? That you could, if you're, let's say you're using Shutterfly or collage.com, plug for my own company, like you're creating a book, but you can then create multiple copies of it very easily and share it more broadly with family. So it actually adds another layer of protection for you. And of course, there's a myriad of other products that can be created that are really neat. In some cases, they're archival. In some cases, they're not. The site that I actually use if I'm looking for just true archival materials is probably Archival Methods. I know that a lot of photo managers use that as well, and I trust them with, if I'm storing, precious and fragile older photos, I would turn to Archival Methods, but I would also make sure they're digitized and turned into something else, like a book, for example, or a slideshow. That's another great use case.
That's great. Good input, guys. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Kate, for dropping Archival Methods in there.
Yes,
I love
couldn't
them.
resist. I also have a connection to them, so I
They're
appreciate the
great.
plug for
Yeah.
for that company. Thank you.
We use them all the time.
Yes, absolutely. You're definitely one of our big customers, Rachel.
Oh,
Back to
I
Rachel
didn't know that.
Arbuckle.
Good.
So I know it's hard to kind of talk about pricing because it's different for every client, but maybe you could just generalize about the approach that photo managers in general can use for pricing. So people just get a sense of what to expect when they, start talking with a photo manager about working with them.
Sure. Yeah, the infamous pricing topic that everybody just loves to talk about. I'm losing you. So we charge hourly for our services, and we typically require a 20-hour deposit to get started. And it works very similar to a retainer. And as we work through the project, we keep the client apprised. So we send out updates every Friday. We have a number of photo managers on staff, and he or she will works with a particular client and will provide updates on exactly what they did. We do have some of our services that are per item. So scanning is per item, video conversions are per item, film reel conversions are per foot. And the reason we do that, quite honestly, is, and it's, I always say, once you've seen one project, you've seen one project. And the reality is that your journey is unique, and the way that we're going to organize it and our end result is going to be just as unique as the journey that created these photos. And so we work with each client based on that. But I would say our average project is probably $3,000 to $5,000 when we're dealing with decades of memories.
So that's a great segue to this next question here. So how many photos does an average client bring you to organize? Or again, does that fall under the you've seen one project, you've seen one project mantra?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly, we'll look at somebody's phone, for example, which is a little bit easier to, and some people on their phone will have 5,000 photos. I would say probably 15 to 20 is average, but we've got people that have 30 to 50,000 on their phone. We had a client recently who brought us, I thought this is going to be a piece of cake. He brought us 2 external hard drives. That was it. He had over 4 million files. I've never seen that many files on 2 hard drives. 4 million files. So needless to say, just the transfer time alone. And so that's why it is difficult. So if you're a photo manager, keep that in mind. And if you're, somebody who's looking to hire a photo manager, keep in mind that it's very difficult to provide an estimate on pricing, because the reality is, whether we're opening a drive or we're opening a photo box, I have no idea what's in there until, I start working on the project. And I want to make sure to provide you the service that you're paying for and make sure we can get to that end result.
That's great. And Rachel, let's just, Kate, why don't you find 1 or 2 more questions, and then we'll probably, we'll look forward to joining us again next Wednesday. But Rachel, Niesen, you're good with pricing, and you have an understanding of pricing, I know, based on your, even in the position that you are as a project manager now. How do you think about pricing?
So I think pricing is one of the, I just had 2 meetings this morning about pricing and packaging. How do you go to market with pricing or packaging for your clients or customers? And there is, as Rachel Arbuckle so wisely mentioned, there's this principle called like price elasticity, elasticity of demand. And so much of it has to do with sizing appropriately, sizing not only the project that you're undertaking, but also the value that it delivers to a customer. So let's just say, for example, that the same size of photo organizing project actually could have different value to 2 different kinds of customers, depending on the how they would define their own pain points and how significant it is, or based on their capacity to buy, which is kind of like share of wallet is kind of the, I don't know, MBA term for that. So I always say that you should do research, that before putting any pricing out there, if you're considering being a photo manager, for example, you should do market research. And there are a couple ways to do that. You can just have some conversations with prospective clients, talk to other photo managers or others doing similar services, and also understand the buying behaviors in your area. Because I would imagine a photo organizer, manager, lead in New York City might have different pricing than one in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, for example, just because the elasticity of demand and the pricing expectations are very different. So there's a lot. I mean, there's actually there are a couple of great companies that talk a lot about pricing, and one of them is Andreessen Horowitz. The other is OpenView Partners. I mean, I would definitely do. There's also McKinsey. I mean, you could do some, I don't know, lightweight MBA research the pricing, but just be careful. I think the worst thing you can do is throw a dart on a board and be like, oh, that's my pricing. It requires research.
Yeah, and for those who are wondering, as consumers asking that question, one thing I used to say, I learned over time as I struggled when I first started, like, what do I charge? And and many people almost undercharge originally, because most people that do this for a living are passionate about people's stories and their photos. I always say, if you love photos and you love stories, you're going to love this job. So that means it's hard sometimes to say, oh, I'm going to charge this much money for that. But then when you're putting hours and hours in, you do need to. But this much I know for sure is nobody that you ever hand back a project, and I'm sure any of the photo managers that are actually here can tell you, nobody's ever said, oh, darn, I can't believe I just invested in that. I mean, it's a priceless gift to yourself and back to somebody. So whether, again, you're doing this yourself through Save Your Photos Month and watching our courses, or whether you hire somebody to do it, or whether you choose to do this, you're thinking about doing it as a business, it's meaningful work, right? None of this is done if you take the time yourself to get your photos in order, if you pay somebody to do it, or if you do it for somebody. At the end of the day, it matters. It's really important. People care deeply about these. Having your family photos together is a phenomenal gift that we can give to ourselves and to our families and things. So. All right, Kate, might we do one more question and then we'll kind of wrap up?
I think we're actually good. I think we answered most, and I think the rest get pretty technical. And I've posted the link to our private Facebook group, Advice from the Photo Organizing Pros. We'd love to have you join us there to continue the discussion. It's a great place to ask super detailed questions, and you'll get feedback from other folks kind of, doing projects by themselves on their own, and also from a lot of our photo organizer members who are in that group as well. So you'll get great feedback if you post your questions there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. So this is our first Wednesday. We're going to be doing this every Wednesday through the month of September. So next week, we bring, I'm pretty sure it's Carolyn Gunther, who is also a professional photo organizer, but a genealogist. She does a lot of work with helping clients deal with their genealogy photos. And she also teaches a lot of classes. And each week you'll see we have different guest speakers. Matt Paxton, and for those of you who watch Legacy List on PBS, or Hoarders, he's a downsizing expert, really interesting, fun guy. He'll be joining us. And then we're going to actually cap Save Your Photos Month with a conversation with a documentary filmmaker who's done a film called Lives Well Lived. And so it's a different link. You'll be able to watch this documentary. It's actually on your PBS stations. She interviewed 40 older adults, obviously they're adults, older people, about their lives. And it's just a really upbeat, heartwarming documentary that it's about people's stories, right? And we'll have a chance, we'll do a live interview with her. So all of this, you'll be getting emails, and as you're part of Save Your Photos Month, you'll learn more about it. So we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And let's say Rachel A, and then Rachel N, any final words of advice or wisdom you want to share with everybody before we say goodbye?
I would just say that whether, I always tell clients, whether you work with me, you work with another photo manager, you do it yourself, just take that first step to do it, because we always think we have more time. And it's just such a precious and comforting feeling to know that you did it. And if it means you need a little help with different steps, that's okay to do that. There's a lot of experts out there that can help you.
Yeah, I can't say it better than that. Rachel summed it up. And I would also say join the Facebook group if you can, because I know I find tremendous value there, and I'm a professional photographer, and I know that the tips and advice and guidance that the group shares is amazing. So
yeah, we have a very generous, passionate group of professionals who willingly give up a lot of their time to answer some of those questions and things that just there to help you. So again, thank you so much, Kate and Isabel, for being behind the scenes with us. All of you that have joined us today. Hope to see you again live next week, and also enjoy those classes. Feel free again. Also, the Facebook page is just a place to have conversations. Tell us about some of the classes you've enjoyed, maybe an aha moment, something you've learned. Because what's wonderful about this organization, I think about as I add people to that Facebook page all week now, it's been growing, is you're not alone, right? So I want you all to know you're from all over the world. You're not alone. You have a deep passion for this topic. Probably that's why you're here. And so we're on this journey together, and together we can achieve a lot of wonderful things. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.